So welcome everybody to Democrats of Greater Tucson. Today we're speaking with Adelita Grijalva, who is a lifelong public servant, an advocate, and a resident of Southern Arizona, a graduate of Pueblo High School and the University of Arizona. She began her 25-year career working at the Pima County Teen Court, helping court-involved youth through a restorative justice diversion program. Adelita was first elected to public office in 2002, serving on the Tucson Unified School District Governing Board, where she championed the expansion of preschool access and defended Mexican-American studies. In 2020, Adelita was elected to the Pima County Board of Supervisors, representing District 5. She became the first Latina and the only second woman to serve as chair of the board, and was reelected in 2024 with over 73% of the vote. As a supervisor, she prioritized affordable housing, climate resiliency, and community wellness, launching the county's first free preschool program for low-income families and protecting open spaces in the Sonoran Desert for future generations to enjoy. A believer in public-private partnerships, Adelita serves on multiple community boards. She lives in Tucson with her husband and her 3 children, and is the proud daughter of former, unfortunately past, Congressman Raul Grijalva. We miss him a lot. Welcome, Adelita. I will turn the floor over to you and spotlight you for everyone so everybody can see you nice and clearly.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining. So my name is Adelita Grijalva. I'm the proud granddaughter of Bracero and the daughter of a congressman. That is the promise of this country, and that's the promise that's under attack from Trump, Musk, and their extremist agenda. They're hurting the most vulnerable in our communities: seniors, veterans, children, immigrants. No one is safe from their cruel and hateful crusade, but together we can stop them. And so I am running to fight for working people and fight against this agenda. There is a picture of me in high school, graduated from Pueblo. I'm a mom, an advocate, and a public servant, and a lifelong Southern Arizonan. I know the issues facing our community because I am from this community. It raised me and helped me be the person that I am today. I spent my life fighting for a better future that we all deserve, from 20 years on the Tucson Unified School District Governing Board, where I strengthened public education for all children, to the Pima County Board of Supervisors, where our spearheaded investments in affordable housing, childcare, and protecting our beautiful Sonoran Desert. In Congress, I will not back down. I promise to stand up for you and for our principles, and I know our community's hopes and struggles and our strengths because they're in my DNA. I will be your voice and support policies to bring down costs, protect Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and defend public education and protect the rights and freedoms for all of us, no matter where you are, where you come from. I am proud to have the endorsements from Senator Mark Kelly, former Representative Gabby Giffords, and Senator Ruben Gallego, and I've also been endorsed by Emily's List, Reproductive Freedom for All, and the League of Conservation Voters. I'm running for Congress because Southern Arizona deserves a progressive leader that will fight and not fold. We're going to fight for our community. To fight is in my DNA, from my dad, my mom, and countless women who have shared their name with me. Adelitas were women that fought alongside soldiers in the Mexican Revolution. That's the legacy that I carry with me on this fight, which starts right here, right now in Southern Arizona, and starts with us. So growing up in a family deeply involved in community advocacy, I learned the importance of civic engagement early on. My experiences with TUSD and Pima County have reinforced my belief in the power of collaborative leadership to affect positive change. I dedicated over 2 decades to public service, including 20 years on the board, which is a volunteer but unpaid position. I mean, it's elected, but volunteer. And I'm running for Congress to bring our community's voice to Washington and continue to advocate on the issues that matter most to us. I want to thank you all for your time and attention, and this is an opportunity to get involved with our campaign. We have phone banking happening every day, canvassing happening throughout the week, opportunities to come and help. I know that some people are like, canvassing is in my rearview mirror. I don't want to do canvassing, and I'm not sure about phone banking. We have volunteers here every day, and so perhaps you can bring in waters, make a meal, call other volunteers to come and volunteer. I think there's so many ways that we would love to have you. Our goal this upcoming Saturday, we're doing the Gran Marcha. And what that means is it is the big march. Our ballots are going to be in people's homes by Saturday, mailed out in 2 days. And so in 2 days, they'll have their ballots, and we want to remind them that now is the time to vote right away, because then what we can do is dedicate our resources to those that have not yet voted. And so when those ballots are there, our canvassers will be there, and we're going to be canvassing throughout the district, in the West Valley, in Nogales, throughout. And so any assistance that you can do to help us in that process would be really greatly appreciated. And so that is our information. I was out canvassing yesterday and was able to talk to several people. I've also been able to attend several rallies. I was at the No Kings rally, community events. We were at Bisbee Pride. I was also at Juneteenth. And what we're hearing that people are very frustrated and angry with the damaging actions that have been taken by this current administration, that people want someone that will stand up for them and will advocate, help, support, and show the kind of leadership that is needed to protect them and their families. I know firsthand how federal resources impact our communities at the local level and what it looks like when those resources are not allocated. At TUSD, federal funds from Department of Education means the difference between ensuring a child with special needs gains access to resources that they need or not, need to learn or not. It means a difference between children having food in their stomachs to learn and grow or having to go to school hungry. At the Board of Supervisors, we work closely with Arizona's delegation, congressional delegation, to ensure all areas of Pima County had access to basic preventative health services, even in the most remote parts of our community. As a mom, I appreciate the challenges facing families and women at a very personal level. Our community deserves more public services. And what we need in Congress and what we need in every elected office is more public service and less political opportunists. This race is very personal to me. It comes on the heels of the loss of my dad. I'm running because I believe in the values that he shared, and I know our community wants to keep a progressive voice in the House and one who fights. We're not living in normal times. So normal tactics of being in the minority party are just not adequate. We need to speak out, we need to protest, we need to march, and we need to make sure our voices are heard. And our nation is letting Trump know that we are not okay. Early, like on the conservative side, the estimates are 4 million people. On the other side, you're hearing like 11 or 12 million people came out in mass yesterday or day before yesterday to say, we are not okay with this. And we want you to keep your hands off of our community members, keep your hands off of our Medicaid, keep your hands off Social Security, veteran services. That is what we are doing. This administration is blatantly disregarding our federal courts, treating our Constitution as a set of suggestions. And rather than following the binding law. Our founding fathers intentionally created co-equal branches of government, and this is the time for Congress to step up and exercise its power and put a check on this tyrannical administration. Now is not the time to reach across the aisle. You simply cannot negotiate with extremists. It's about more than playing defense. We need a leader who can walk the walk and advance environmental, economic, and social justice issues. I know our families are not okay with the same old playbook. These are unprecedented times and there is too much at stake. People are getting hurt. We need to take action. We need to be aggressive. We need to organize and show that our voices are more powerful than one man. Now more than ever, we need voices that will stand up and fight for what's right, even in the face of threats. And so I am very honored to have the endorsements from leaders and organizations that have come around and to collaborate and support this race. Senator Mark Kelly and Senator Ruben Gallego very early endorsed this campaign, including former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, Senator Ben Lujan from New Mexico, our neighbor, and just recently Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And so we have several PACs that are also supported, including the Giffords PAC, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Emily's List, Reproductive Freedom for All, the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicaid, Christopher Street. And I was the first candidate that organization endorsed, and they are ensuring protections for the trans community. Jane PAC, Jane Fonda Environmental, Sierra Club, Moms Fed Up, UFCW Local 99, CWA, the Council of Machinists, IBEW, and AFSCME, along with over 50 local elected officials from throughout the congressional district and over 25 members of Congress. So I think that in this time, I'm very appreciative and heartened that when we're talking to all of these people, all these organizations, these were all competitive interview processes. And in this race, no one is handing anyone anything. Every single person running is running because this is our democracy. And the people who are going to decide this are the voters. And so we are doing what we can to make sure to get out. And I will say out in front of voters, and what I will say is representation is important. It is. And so when you look at the members of Congress, 2% are Latina. 10 of those 15 have endorsed our campaign. And less of that 2% are Mexican American. And of the women in Congress, all on either side of the aisle, only 7 have children in our schools. And I do. I have my son, Joaquin, is going to be in 8th grade. In 9th grade. My son, Raul, is going to be a junior next year. And my daughter, Adelita, just recently graduated. And so I'm very concerned for what their future holds. And it was very emotional to stand on the stage in front and speak in front of the graduating class at my alma mater at Pueblo High School and look out into a sea of 500 graduates and genuinely be worried about what their options are going to be when you're looking at the cuts to the Department of Education, when you're looking at the fact that several, and the salutatorian spoke about it, that her grandmother has been custodial parent for her and her 3 siblings. And she is the last of those 3 that is going to an Ivy. And she got a full ride scholarship, and her grandmother on her Social Security check supported all of them. And she mentioned to me at the end, she said, her check was late last week. Do you know what's happening? That's the reality for our veterans who cannot get anyone on the phone to schedule an appointment, for our families that are making decisions about whether they're going to go to urgent care with a health crisis or have food on the table. Because despite Trump's promises, the cost of everything has continued to go up, but the revenues coming into homes has stayed the same or lower, especially for those families that are working in service industries. Hours are getting cut because people are not going out to eat. They're not shopping as much because there's so much uncertainty. So I am honored to be running for this seat. I am privileged to have a lot of support, and I believe it's support that I've earned because we've done a lot of good things in this community. I've been in elected office for 22 years, but a lifelong member of this community, involved in this community. And I think experience matters. And I hear some of the negativity about the Democratic Party and some of the fact that it feels a little bit like we've lost our mission. I do think that the Democratic Party needs to embrace the progressive wing of our party and really start defending the working people. This is not the time for moderate. This is the time for us to push a progressive agenda that is going to take care of our working people. And this bill that just passed is the largest redistribution of wealth in our nation's history, from the 99% to the 1% of millionaires and billionaires. And that's not something we can stand. And right now we're just relying on the hope that people won't vote, because both the House, Senate, and the White House is all clearly in one party. But we have an opportunity. That bill, that horrible, wretched bill, passed by one vote. So me being in the seat would have made a difference. It doesn't mean that it wouldn't have passed, but there were 6 members of the Republican Party that did not vote. And so we would have made them and forced them to vote their values, and then go out to their communities and explain why did they vote against the interests of the constituents that elected them to office. So with that, I will pause. I see Larry has his hand up.
Larry, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Thanks so much for coming on the program today. It's really great to hear you talk. Mike and I just went out with 3 members of the University of Arizona College Dems. So these are our college kids, and we asked them, so what's on the mind of young people? And they all said, well, I don't have money to rent an apartment. I'm living with my mom. I don't have any money to buy a car, and I don't have any money in my wallet. And what specific steps can you take to, meet the needs of young Democrats today?
I think, honestly, those concerns are echoed by a lot of people. When my husband and I first got married, I had a job. He just graduated with his master's degree in library sciences. So he didn't have a job. I had a job. So I had some income from my nonprofit job, and he had good credit. So together, our marriage is beautiful, and we were able to get like a amazing little starter home. That house and that price range does not exist anymore.
Yeah.
So we have to make it easier for people to be able to attain the basics, like shelter, food on the table, be able to start a family should they want to. And so one of the things that has happened as a result of DOGE and this administration is people used to really value a federal position because there was some security in that. You knew that you might not be making the most money, but that there was security in there. And this administration has just wiped out whole departments. And the trickle effect of those is that we have cuts at every level. And I think that what we need to do is stop the bleeding all over, because the cuts really are not affecting any tangible savings. I think we just have people that don't understand government, respectfully, don't understand the purpose of government, and are looking at an Excel spreadsheet and sort of circling and just like throwing things out. And so I think affordable housing is going to be really critically important, making sure that people have a livable wage and an opportunity for advancement. And one of the things that I'm really proud of at the Pima County level is when we first got there, Pima County was not in the housing business at all. They left it to the cities to deal with. Pima County was not. They're like, that's not what we do. And so the first budget that our office was able to have some input in, I asked that we set aside $5 million for affordable housing. And I know that that's like a drop in the bucket, but having my experience of writing grants for 25 years, I know that if something is in your budget, it's a value statement and can be leverage that's used for matching funds and other things. And so as a result, thus far, in the last 3 years, 11 million has been spent. That first year, it's government. Things take a little bit of time. There was a process. There was a housing survey. All these things had to happen. But of that set aside funds, 11 million has been dedicated specifically to affordable housing. And that money has generated $422 million of investment, private and public, because that money has been used for gap funding. So if you're a developer and you want to develop affordable homes, there's usually a gap, like let's say $1 million that you as a developer have to invest in order to show that, this is what you're going to do. Pima County is able to fill that gap with that funding. And so it's been able to stretch significantly. And as a result of that success, just last month, the Pima County Board of Supervisors voted to invest $250 million over the next 10 years. And that's great. And that's not an increase in taxes. That is just better utilizing the funds that we have available. And so I also think that for young people wanting to start a family, you have to know where your children are going to be and that they're safe and that they're in really amazing, robust educational programs. So when I was on the Tucson Unified School District Governing Board, we opened up 2 infant and early learning centers and added a preschool program to every elementary school that had capacity, which was most of them. But one of the unfortunate things is that those were all community schools, but we had this list of families that qualified for free or reduced preschool. We just didn't have the room. Like Head Start was at max capacity. And so what we did when we got to the Board of Supervisors is by a 3-2 vote with Supervisor Scott and Supervisor Hines, together, we dedicated $10 million a year to preschool. And part of the requirement for me is that they prioritize our K-12 systems before they went anywhere else, like for private programs. And as a result of that, every single district in Pima County has a PEEPS program, Pima Early and Educational Program, in their schools. And and thousands of young people are getting free or reduced preschool. That's critical for young families. And open space is also critical. And so one of the other things that first year is setting aside $2 million a year for Pima County to be able to go and seek out those properties that were privately owned, but that were right near protected areas that are already part of like Catalina Mountain or Saguaro National Park. And so as a result of that investment, we've saved almost 7,800 acres for preservation for forever. And what that does is it does generate jobs. Our Arizona, and specifically Southern Arizona, brings in billions of dollars in tourism because people love to look at a saguaro. They just love it. It's beautiful. It's not something you can see anywhere else. And a lot of people, and I think that it's those kind of investments, making sure that our working people have protections. I think that that's where we make a difference. And one of the things that Trump said was that he promised to bring the prices down. I think the people that elected him should really hold him accountable. There's no way to do that without the investment.
Quick question.
Yeah.
There's a Pima County on Aging. What do you think about the idea of a Pima County Council on Youth? And for instance, it could teach kids how to write a resume. It's amazing. Kids don't know. When I was a kid, a friend of mine showed me his resume, and it was typed up with red, typewriter ink. He had no idea. Or another one would be how to apply for a job. Because I think a lot of kids just show up in a t-shirt and shorts, and they haven't done any research. And, but if you tell them what to do, I think it would be helpful. What are your thoughts on an idea like that?
I think that a Pima Council on Youth makes total sense. But one of the things that I think is really important is we have to be, regardless of our age, open to taking the advice and direction from young people. And I think that
Yes.
is where are sometimes people that are older are like, oh, but you don't know what you're talking about. Because I sort of have to push back on the idea that they're not ready. It's just sometimes we're not ready. And so I think that we have to really open our minds to understanding that regardless of age, we have some amazing leaders in our community. And it is because they have invested time going out, talking to people, going door to door. Patrick Robles and Eddie Barron, Patrick is now the Southern Arizona Director for Senator Gallego, and Eddie Barron is going to graduate from the university. And I remember him when he was like 9, showing up to canvases, showing up and speaking out. And so we just have to remember that we have to, if we want young people to be excited about anything that's going on in our community, we have to be willing to pause and take a listen. And that is the one thing I think that working in teen court really showed me, that we have some amazing, phenomenal young people that have very clear ideas of what's right and wrong. And we have to be willing to listen.
Thank you.
President Joe Daniszewski has arrived, so he's going to take over the moderation, and I'm going to read any questions in the chat.
Great. Oh, I see Mike has his hand up.
I loved the fact about your father that as a progressive, I never had to worry about how he was going to vote. He was a true blue progressive, and I really appreciated that about him. But nobody's perfect. And so I wonder if seeing his years and years of service in Congress, if there's anything that you might do different as a congressperson from what your father did.
I think that we're different people and our experiences are different. The values are the same. So he's my dad. He raised me, him and my mom. I think that the kind of Congress that my dad walked into is very different than the one that I would be walking into. There is not a lot of willingness right now to work across the aisle because you can't negotiate with extremists. You can't negotiate with people who think that despite all of the facts that are available, Trump is right. We have to have a balance there. And so we have an opportunity in this race. We have an opportunity in midterms. But I think my dad, what people really always appreciated about him and what I appreciated about him is he was very strategic, very smart, and worked to bring coalitions together. And so it is that example that I carry with me always. It's what I did in Pima County, what I did on the school board, and what I would do in Congress. And like, how do we take this incredibly diverse district that has, if you put all of the islands of Hawaii and the state of Connecticut into CD7, we still have some room for a couple of cities. It is vast. And so the needs of cells and the needs of Avondale, Tolleson, Yuma City are different than Nogales and Bisbee and Douglas. And I have visited all of these areas. So I've talked to people. And so when I say that I'm very proud of like the 50 plus local elected officials that are endorsing me, I'm proud of that because they didn't know me before. These are communities that don't know me. I would say the senators that are here in Tucson, the city council members, board of supervisors, we've had an opportunity to work together. But I've also said, look at my record. Look at what I say I'm going to do and what we do together. Because nothing here is done in isolation. And so the one thing that I am very much like my dad is that the person that you see, that you talk to in the street or at the PTO meeting, or for my dad, in my dad's case, at the coffee shop or in front of his house, that is the same person that you see in Congress. And that is that I have been in elected office for 22 years, and people that know me are like, you haven't changed that much, which is great. And it's a compliment, but it's because I am very grounded in the fact that this is not about electing Adelita. It is about making sure that Southern Arizona has access to the halls of Congress on a regular basis, and I would be privileged to be that representative. That is the same. I think that it's hard to say, like, how are you going to be different? How are you going to be your own person? I am my own person. And I am, I just think that it's really important that when we're talking about the work that we've been able to accomplish together, my dad's been in Congress all this time that I have been in elected office. He does not have time to like, hey, let me check in on you and see what's going on and how can I help you? He had a big job. So I'm very confident in being able to do the work, being able to start from day one, but also knowing that if I don't know something, I sure know someone who is an expert at it. And I've established relationships with people on my own that allow me to be able to call and tap into those resources. And that's what we'll do. All of you will be a part of a strategic planning process. I mean, I'm very excited about the work that's ahead. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but we're going to do it together.
Great. Okay, we got a hand up from Paul Stapleton Smith.
Indeed, and Adelita, we couldn't be more delighted to have you with us and for the work that you've done with us over the years. And going to Larry Bodine's question, which was so important, when we talk about good jobs and the future for our workforce and our young folks, our unions take on billionaires where it matters most, right? Negotiating, hitting them right in the pocketbook when they seize profits. The number of unions that have endorsed you, why do unions matter so much to you? And again, this goes to Larry's question and to what shaped ultimately your political philosophy. What would you say to that, sister, and the urgency of unions to make those paychecks available to folks and organize?
So my tata was a proud union member. My grandpa was a proud union member at Copper Mine. So I heard from very early on the importance of unions and the fact that they treat people like people. Like I remember my tata talking about how the union always treated him like he was a man, not like he was some entry level whoever. And that unions have allowed for what we see today, and any protection of people, unions are the foundation to that. So I believe in collective bargaining. I believe in the right for union to exist in federal systems too. I think that expanding the opportunities that we have for more and more investment in protecting people, protecting pensions, protecting benefits. The unions fight for that. Our 8-hour workday, thank you, union members, thank you. Because the fact that we don't have children working in the United States in manufacturing jobs, thank you, unions. The fact that women have an opportunity to be able to work in our systems, thank you. Because unions have pushed a lot of those old sort of notions out the window. And I think that the more and more I talk to people, and I've been endorsed by 11 unions, the more and more I talk to those union members, what they want is they want someone who's going to fight against Trump, against decertifying unions. Because early on in this campaign, I remember speaking to a couple of unions and they're like, oh, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And 2 weeks ago, I was talking to another union and they're like, we just got a letter yesterday. Yeah. For me, I think that's where experience matters, where the advocacy matters, and understanding that this is a fight that we're not going to lose. We're not losing it. We've made too many gains to get here. We're not losing it. And I'm happy to join thousands, hundreds of thousands in fighting for that.
Okay, we've got Craig Markin. Do you have your hand up?
Yeah, Adelita, since it affects your district quite a bit, what is your position on I-11 and what can you do about it in Congress?
I-11, I am completely opposed to the current placement. I think that it is going to devastate riparian habitat, communities, vegetation, Sonoran Desert. I do think that there is funding that my dad advocated for and was approved by the previous Congress to modernize our ports of entry. That has not been fully implemented. And most of that has to do with the fact that we don't have enough customs agents to be able to monitor both sides. So I think that there is an opportunity for us to really focus on, if we're going to expand I-11, why can't we look at mirroring closer to I-10? So we're not devastating so many areas, specifically in Avra Valley. So I am opposed to the current placement. As a board of supervisor, we passed a resolution that was sent to then Senator Sinema and Senator Kelly in opposition of I-11. And I think that where we have to look is where is the bottleneck? Where is the support needed? And do another study. That study is decades old. So not only do we have to really totally implement the modernization of the ports of entry, all three of which are in with Mexico in CD7, by the way, but then also look at where those bottlenecks are and how can we alleviate some of that without destroying our values.
There's a question in the chat from Michael DeSantis. He thanks you for all the great things that you do, and he wants to know how you feel moving up to the national and international decision-making level, and wants to know any thoughts that you have about the current situation in Israel and Gaza, and I guess Iran now.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. You know what's been fascinating to me is we've had 2 forums, and the question has not come up. I remember going from TUSD to the Pima County Board of Supervisors, and I'm like, oh, no, that's a little bit stressful. Then once you get there, oh, I have more experience than you. Okay, good. So I do feel like I'm very confident in that, and I also feel confident in being able to get to work right away. I think being endorsed by the Progressive Caucus is really important because automatically you have some people there that are going to be able to be supportive. And I've already had people reach out saying, okay, right after the primary, let's get together. Let's start talking about some of these policies, some of this immigration, Medicaid for all, the green energy, or my dad pushing for environmental justice for all. I think that we have a lot of really great opportunities to work together. And so I'm very excited about that. I think that regarding Israel, Palestine, and now Iran, I think immediately we have to restore humanitarian aid. We have to release the remaining Israeli hostages, and we have to work towards a 2-state solution. So I think that is going to be really critically important. And then it's critical that Iran not obtain a nuclear weapon, which would be catastrophic for the US and for our allies. We need to use all levels of diplomacy to prevent this conflict from expanding. And this administration needs to be clear in what its foreign policy objectives are. Right now, they're sending mixed messages, which only adds to the confusion and risk of miscalculation.
Okay, I think Larry, you had your hand up.
Hi, Adelita, back again. Tell me, what is the very first piece of legislation that you plan to introduce, and who are the other members of Congress that you're going to collaborate with?
I do know that there is some movement already in rolling back the executive order that allowed for the emergency oversight or ability to sort of manipulate this executive order system that Trump has right now. So I think that is the very first thing. I think right now, members of Congress are frustrated because we don't have the numbers that we need. And so that would be like a day one, we have to run and do that, because I do think that allows him to be able to do a lot of really catastrophic things that, unfortunately, what is happening is most of his executive orders have been denied at the court level, especially. I mean, we have to applaud AG Mays and her work on like very quickly getting some resolution in a positive way. But unfortunately, as I mentioned in my opener, this administration, and Trump specifically, doesn't see the balance of power as anything that he has to abide by.
No, he ignores the courts, and there are over 200 court orders and injunctions.
And I think that is where it's really important for us to move together and quickly. And I do think that there is bipartisan support for that, because even in those states that are really bright red, look at those town halls. Look at how angry people are. They're like, we did not send you to Congress to ruin the economy for all of us. And so they're mad. And they're also mad at the overreach. Overreach is an understatement of what Trump is doing. So I think that it's important for us to look at all of those areas. And then really, right now, I won't even allow myself to think of what are you going to do on day one? I mean, I have a plan. We wrote it out. We have it. But I think really just getting through this election and not taking our foot off the gas through the general is going to be really critical.
So what other Congress people are you going to be working with? Who would you reach out to?
Who I've already been talking to is Representative Gaza, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Representative Sylvia Garcia. All have been really just and talking through things. Some retired representatives, Representative Correa. I mean, there are some, Representative Garcia. We have several Garcias, but yes, they've all been very helpful. And really early on, Representative Stansberry and Representative Ledger Fernandez from New Mexico, both of them have been just like, you tell me what you need and I will help you, which I'm so appreciative of, because so much of that is they did their research on me, but they also really valued my dad kind of elevating specifically women of color into leadership positions, and would step aside often to allow, you should be the chair of that subcommittee, you should do this, sort of like push them. Representative Ocasio-Cortez mentioned it during my dad's services. I've heard that repeatedly. And so for them, not only is it the work that I've done, but it's also, they're going to help the daughter of a man that did a lot for them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're a team player, which is great to hear.
Yeah, especially if we're all have the same shared values. We might not get there. We might not get to the same point, but I think pushing the envelope, not settling for something early on. We have to push for what we really want. And if we get halfway there, it's further along than we would have obtained had we just sort of said, whatever you guys think is going to work out. I mean, that's not what our community wants.
We got a couple questions for you. Barbara Warren, your hand is up.
Hey, Barbara.
Hi, Adelita. As we all know, the use of nuclear weapons has raised its ugly head in the Middle East. It's very frightening. However, we mine for them, we make them, and we have this problem in our own country as a threat that would be devastating to our populations, needless to say. What would be your approach to dealing with this issue and not having this happen in our part of the world, let alone the rest of the world? And our society, I think, is very, very threatening to everything.
I'm not going to pretend that I am the foreign policy expert, but I will say that feeling safe in our community is really critically important. And so we're talking about, the proliferation of nuclear weapons. That's one nuclear weapon can cause devastation, and all it does is retaliate. And so we have to use diplomacy, and we have to have clear heads prevail. And that's what I think is the most scary for a lot of people in our community right now, because Trump does not have a clear or level head, and his temperament does not aid to really negotiating. So what we're doing is we're relying on leaders from like Canada and Mexico and the Ukraine to keep their level heads in order to be able to negotiate. Because not only is Trump not, I don't think, capable of negotiating these things, but he's also surrounded himself with people that don't follow the Constitution, don't follow the law. They follow whatever Trump tells them to do. That is incredibly problematic. And I think that it is because of that the skewing of all of the balance of power that we are going to see a big push at the midterm. I think that our communities, every community, is going to we're all witnessing it now. And it hasn't even been, we're not 8 months into this.
Okay, Andrea Kennedy has her hand up.
When you're trying to persuade someone who is opposed to whatever it is you want, what do you do? What do you say? How do you persuade someone over your point of view and get them to get behind whatever effort whatever goal you're trying to accomplish?
I think that's a good question. Thank you for the question, because I met with some farmers in Yuma who have an R behind their name. So they're like, well, I don't believe the Democrats. I don't believe this. I'm like, so tell me what your issues are and what concerns you. Their big issues were H-2A visas, so immigration, and water. And I'm like, so we can connect on those two. Let me tell you what my idea is about water and what my ideas are and our ideas, because these are plans that have been percolating for decades. I'm not going to take credit for it, but ensuring that if you want a fierce advocate for you and H-2A visas, that's me. I can help there. because I believe exactly what you do. And look at my face. Like when I believe in something and it is something that I truly believe in and value, I am going to fight. I will. And the same with water conservation. Oh my gosh, you're preaching to the choir over here. And making sure that CD7, specifically Yuma at the end of the Colorado River distribution, that you get what you're owed in equitable solution. I think that is where we are all going to be speaking the same language. So in spaces where we don't always agree, we can pick out the issues that I think we can align on and then start to build some trust from there. And really, I'm talking about constituency. In Congress, I think we have an opportunity with a few members, the Republican members, that are going to be willing to like work together. But I also think that it is really talking about the issues that are critically important, like PFAS contamination and access to high quality drinking water. I mean, there's certain things that that are fundamental to everybody. And so we can start to work together on those with members of Congress that want to accomplish some of these goals together. That's an opportunity for us as Democrats, because we're the ones that want to protect our environment. But there's also, coupled with that, are some issues that maybe perhaps people that are not politically aligned and everything else, we can work together on. And so I do, and I have some experience with that on the Board of Supervisors. I was the vice chair or chair all 4 years that I was there. And we didn't always get along, and sometimes I was voting alone, and that's okay. I think it's important for us to clearly articulate what our issues are, and then you build consensus and coalition by continuing to be outspoken about why you stand in certain positions and why you will not vote for certain things. And that's something that has resonated and served me well the last 22 years in elected office. And, 25 years in a nonprofit, part of my job was writing grants and trying to convince people to give us funds for this amazing program. So yeah, I'm pretty good.
Well, that's good, Adelita. That sounds great. We still have a couple questions. Your hand is up, and what might your question be?
I had a question along the same lines of what Paul and Craig had asked about unions and I-11. I know one of your opponents had said he supports I-11 and a number of mining projects because they supposedly create union jobs. I've always been skeptical of those claims about job creations from mining or fossil fuel projects. So I was just wondering, what is your response to that?
So my big issue is, what are the health implications of mining? We have many examples in CD7 where people have cancer clusters, where there are increased health risks. There are already people complaining by the Santa Ritas with HUD-based builds, and they haven't even started mining yet. They're just creating the tracks in order to be able to extract from there. And there are already health concerns. And so I think for me, when you're looking, I'm not going to say that I'm against all mining, because respectfully, if a tribal nation wants mining to happen on their tribal land, that is a nation to nation conversation. I would bring up the fact that how are you going to guarantee that those jobs actually happen? Because we've seen a lot of examples, and I've heard firsthand accounts from, let's say, the community in Holbrook that said they were promised that thousands of jobs were going to come from the people that live in Holbrook, and they can count on one hand the number of people that do. Or the investments that the companies are going to make into, let's say, the K-12 system or infrastructure needs or whatever. And when it doesn't happen, what leverage do those communities have? So tightening up that language, I think, is incredibly important. And then we also have to acknowledge the fact that we right now are using an 1872 mining law in order to hold companies accountable. 1872. So we have to fight for that legislation to require royalties and mining extraction from public lands. That if they're going to do that, we have stronger environmental enforcement, and we have mandatory consultation with tribal nations and impacted communities, and tightening that language up, because I think that's important, but also guaranteeing that these are good paying jobs, because we have to acknowledge that mining is going automated in a lot of parts in the world. That's coming to us too, because that's a savings. right? That's one of the arguments. My grandpa lost an eye and the tops of 2 fingers in a mining accident. And
Wow.
and he was disabled and wasn't able to work after that. And so I think that it's important that's good that we talk about that.
Karen Gleason in the chat wants to know what would be the most important issues you think we should tackle, both nationally, I guess, and for here in CD7.
Fighting for our democracy. It's number one, and it has a lot of layers, but really fighting for our democracy. Like, we have processes that are not being adhered to when it comes to immigration, when it comes to elimination of departments and programs, and the ripple effects are chilling. So when you have ICE agents that are able to impersonate Tucson Electric Power company members and knock on doors, try to gain access, how do you expect our communities to, PD and the Sheriff's Department, Pima County Sheriff's Department, have committed to not aiding in any sort of federal business, any sort of federal action? But that's not the same all over. And people are coming with mass. I think that what happened in Minnesota, and the tragic loss of a state rep there and being injured, their spouses, that was a targeted attack at an elected public servant. That's chilling. And when people ask me, are you afraid? I'm like, I can't allow myself to be afraid. I'm a little more cautious, probably looking around a little more than I would have done before, but I think that it's incredibly frightening. That's the kind of thing that we're dealing with in this country. And so there's so many issues, but the biggest one is like, how do we fight back for our own democracy? We didn't elect a king.
My question has to do with about global warming. And one of the solutions has been pointed out to be nuclear energy, but nuclear energy has been mistakenly called clean by the Trump administration. Unfortunately, many Democrats have been duped into thinking that nuclear energy technology is advanced to the point that it is cleaner than it used to be. And this is simply untrue. And then its water consumption is increased for the smallest new reactors because they're inefficient compared to larger reactors. So what can you do to course correct this environmentally harmful and economically destructive technology?
I think we have to work together with coalitions that are experts in environmental law, environmental justice, and also the devastating impacts to our environment. I think that when we look water and we're tapping into our groundwater and what's happening there, I think that, there's so many cases that every community has. District 5 has a Superfund site. My dad lived in it. And, his cancer was so aggressive that it sort of baffled. It responded really well. And then, it was like, well, gosh, dang, it's so aggressive. Why is it? Like, well, maybe it's because he drank poisoned water for 2 decades. Triggers. So now our family's DNA is forever changed because of toxic poisoning. And so I think that is a lived experience that many across our nation have. And so when we're looking at some of those things and how we're going to have to address them, we have to do it in a way that educates, because I think that that's part of the problem. Trump, for some people, he says things and people believe it. It's like it's revisionist history and facts. So we have to have our facts together and get them out there. And I would be happy to be part of that.
We have our final question for you from Pat Weedoff.
Of all the work you've done in your 22 years of service, what's been your greatest achievement?
It's the people that I've met in the coalitions that we have been able to accomplish things together. I think that example has really served me well in elected office and thus served the community. I think some of the ones that have resulted in that collaboration is teachers endorsed me my very first race when I ran for school board in 2002. And teachers have endorsed me every time I've run for office. And now the National Education Association and Arizona Education Association is endorsing me. And we've had to deal with some fights together. Budget cuts in public education have been devastating. And so the fact that people that have not always liked the decisions that I've had to make as an elected person, but still support me because I worked with them, like give me some other options. I think that that's really heartwarming. It really is. And I was walking around Juneteenth yesterday, and one of the dancers came up to me, just like in 5th grade. She's like, "Hey, did you read to 5th graders at Monzo?" And I said, "I did." And she said, "And you gave me this coloring book that's about saving our environment." I said, "I did. I color in that book every day." I'm like, yes, little tiny environmentalists all over the community.
Yes.
And for me, it's that privilege of being able to talk to people directly and reach people that you don't even know you'd have an impact on. I went and read a couple books and gave out some coloring books. But that to me is like, it's those unintended sort of consequences of being involved in our community and really just finding so much joy and being able to talk to people and do this. I don't think you can fake that. And so I'm glad that it's sort of, those things that fill my soul also have a benefit in some other ways. I feel very selfish in that way, that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. I love doing these things, and that it has a positive impact. It's great. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. And everybody, let's hear it for Adelita Grijalva.
Thank you.
Awesome job. And thank you, Democrats of Greater Tucson, for great questions.
Thank you. I do want to acknowledge my mom was on the line. I just read through like the people that are here. Thanks for joining, Mom.
Oh, that's really great.
Yeah.
That's a great sign for a candidate.
There's Mom's head.
There she is, the top of her head. You can barely see. Thanks, Mama. All right. Talk to you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Adelita.
Thanks for joining, Adelita.
Bye-bye.
So what a great Zoom meeting. Thank you all for being here and great questions. So other than that, Mike, anything else?
Not at all. We're going to end the meeting for everybody now. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yep. Thank you much.